Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to a bit of a wrap-up discussion video today for the 3v3 LCS tournament that happened this past weekend. So this is going to be pretty similar to the last time I did one of these videos after LCS 9, where I'm going to talk about kind of just the meta trends at the beginning, and then go over into the individual deck lists from Top Cut later on. So this is going to be a super long video because we have to go over 3 times the amount of deck lists, and I tend to go in detail. So I'm going to try and make this video not too long, but it will be timestamped so you guys can skip around if needed. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just get started here. So we're going to start off with the overall deck breakdown. And this is not anything too particularly surprising. We have VW and Drytron at the top. These were kind of just, of course, the most expected metagame decks. People were preparing for them. And I think something important to note is context. So at the end of LCS 9, this is still where Drytron was in its infancy. People were trying to figure it out, right? And it wasn't really solved or optimized. And I think that really lent itself to a lot of people trying to innovate the deck, and people were really trying to optimize it. And it came to a point where people were really starting to craft effective strategies, and the list was becoming much more standardized. And that's going to be manifested, of course, in the deck lists in this video. But people, I think, at the time were also very unfamiliar with ways to hand trap the deck or just stop the deck in general. So you can see the fact that Drytron really rose up in popularity at that point. I mentioned this in my kind of pre-LCS discussion video where I talked about things to watch out for. Go check that out if you want to. But basically what I said in there as one of the points was that if this tournament happened maybe a month or so ago, I think Drytron would have been the clear front runner. But as we kind of got into the weeks leading up to this LCS, people were really just crafting ways to handle Drytron really well. One very interesting statistic that I found was that 38 out of the top 48 deck lists were side decking Alley of Justice Cycle Reader. So that definitely goes to show that people maybe were even over preparing for this deck, but if nothing else, it shows that Drytron was very well accounted for. So I think naturally that led to the rise of Virtual World to kind of become the premier top deck of the format, because not only has it remained very much unchanged, but it also really has just become much more streamlined and optimized itself. The combo lines are very smoothed out. People are very smart at putting up number 75 or just putting up 2 VFD, holding Lala, things like that. And now people are finding very creative ways to, if they don't have to run into resistance, just recycle hand traps and do very unfair things, and also just cater specifically to the Drytron matchup as well. So this leads into the third deck, which is going to be Eldlich, of course. And this always comes up, I think, as a response to the format. I think Eldlich has a vulnerability to Drytron, especially if it's not built for it, due to the fact that activating Sanguine and go-to-land traps leads you very susceptible to Natasha. And additionally, Drytrons can power pass Walkero and Conquistador, so you have to have like very specific answers in your non-defensive or non-engine defensive card lineup to be able to beat Drytron. But against Virtual World, this deck has a pretty solid matchup in terms of the fact that, of course, it doesn't care about VFD, and it really can bypass Shen Chuchi control, which is the de facto response that Virtual World has to this matchup, by just playing, again, specific non-engine cards. That's kind of the key focus, right? Because Eldlich, again, is so adaptable, and that's like one of its key strengths, is that not only does it grind very well, but it has the space to incorporate either other engines, one of them being Zoo, which you can see is the 4th most popular deck. So either incorporating those engines or just playing like a lot of like just hand traps or regular traps in general to supplement it. So that kind of emerged, I think, as another answer and part of the metagame. And we can look to other decks here as well. You see Dogmatika Invoked and Altergeist. Those kind of popped up last format. And then we see Adamancipator, which is a cool combo deck that definitely is unique in the fact that it doesn't operate in a way that loses to Bell or Meister all the time. So that's like one of the things it has going for it for sure. But the other thing too is that people are now kind of leaning more towards like Nibiru and Gamma again. So that might be what makes this deck kind of harder to pilot in the future, but still very strong, very hyped up with both the Prank-Kids version and without it, of course. And then we have Dragon Link, which is kind of similar to Adamancipator in the fact that it has ways to just deal with like hand traps or other ways to try and combat it. It's very good at playing through disruption, and that's what it's notorious for. And the end boards that it's creating are not very auto win in the same way that it was with like Buster Lock still legal, right? But it's trying to supplement low resource plays with hand traps as well as just plays to recover. It has extremely exceptional follow-up, which is one of the best strengths of the deck. And then we have Shaddoll, which is going to be actually very trap focused. A lot of people like trap Shaddoll. And I think that one of the best arguments to playing Shaddoll right now is Aerial, because that card has continued to be very strong and dominant in terms of its impact on the metagame. So we can now move into the top cut deck lists, or rather, sorry, the top cut breakdown before we get into the top cut deck lists here. So this didn't really change, right? We have the same decks at the top here. One thing to note is Dragon Link conversion rate. I believe it's 4 out of, it was what, 14? Yeah, 4 out of 14 made it here. So definitely very strong for sure. And then you see the other decks as well. Some things to note here are BA, which is really cool to see. Dinosaur, which is finding ways to adapt despite it falling off a bit in popularity. Phantom Knights, which I still think is pretty underrated and unexplored. And then Bird Up, or Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc, which is the deck that a lot of people still just don't frankly know what it does. So that's definitely one of the biggest strengths to have that as a bit of a dark horse candidate. So now we're going to move into the top cut deck list. And I do want to, again, keep this video to ideally under an hour. I want it to be faster than that, but we're going to try and just speed through this as fast as we can. So first off, we have the first place Zoodiac Eldlich checklist. And if you want to know who the players are that piloted this, you can look at them in the bottom left here where you could see the name of the deck. That's where I have their names. So that's something that to watch out for if you want to keep your eye out for that. But this is Zoodiac Eldlich, very, very strong in terms of just the way that it's able to operate. If you open Curse Eldon plus a Zoo, then you're very far ahead of your opponent, of course. And this deck has 2 small compact engines, which let you play right here 15 hand traps. I like that the kind of evolution of the kind of defensive card lineup is to just play all hand traps right now, because I think that people were vastly overestimating the degree of control decks in the format at the beginning, where everyone was kind of saying, oh, this is now a control format. It's like really, really different. But in reality, VW and Drytron are anything but control decks, so you definitely have to play a lot of hand traps if you are trying to beat that deck and take away resources from them early on, and then eventually use your engine to grind them out. You can see there's 15 hand traps in the main here, and then 9 in the side. So literally there's 24 hand traps, and if that doesn't indicate a combo-oriented format, I'm not sure what does. You can see as well in the side deck, there's very few cards to actually deal with control mirror matches, but still picking hand traps that have applications against specifically Eldritch mirrors, things like DD Crow and Ghost Bell and Skullmeister. All these are very, very strong. Mistaken Rest here, you can see this is a trademark of Paolo, who also played this exact same list. You can see right here, it's the same list. But yeah, he's always been a big fan of this card in this format. I've been playing it in his list for a while now. I guess the only thing really to note in either the main or the side deck that's like unusual, I wouldn't even say unusual, but something to note is like Droll, in the fact that this is a card where it doesn't actively take away your opponent's resources, so you definitely have to set up a strong enough board to where your opponent can't break past it after you buy yourself a turn. But that being said, of course, it's extremely strong in terms of impact, so definitely a solid card to play in the list here. And then the only cards to mention here besides that are things like Verite Anaconda, which you'll notice there's like no Dragoon or anything, it's just Verite Anaconda. The only reason I can surmise this is here is to force your opponent to like preemptively pop it or use disruptions on it when you're trying to like commit into a Link 2 play by clearing like your golden lands. That way, like you can threaten the Verite and then you don't actually have it, and then they waste a resource for nothing, which is kind of funny. And then Vampire Sucker is cool. It allows you to get advantage off of when you activate, your Scarlet to summon back from grave, or of course its own effects. So that's also kind of a nice sort of adaptation here. It works if you normal summon like Ash or your Ghost Spell as well. Keep that in mind. But nothing too much to say about this list from both Christian Thomas and Paulo Gonçalves. So let's go and move on to Gabriel Netz's Dragon Link list. And this is pretty cool. We see first off the Dragon Maid package. So this is very standard in this deck right now. You'll see it present in almost all the lists in Top Cut. And this is cool because not only does it get you another bounce in tandem with Seal in terms of tiding, so you have 2 bounces, which is hard for any deck to play through, but it also is a follow-up by itself. So when you use it on your opponent's turn, you get to get a kind of monster reborn on the next turn, because of course you can't use both in one turn. That would be crazy. But still is a great follow-up card. And this in tandem with Rocket Tracer are what the deck is built around, I would say. You want to open one and then get the other off of LP, ideally. And it's very easy to open Tracer. You have obviously the Tracers, the Quick Launches, you have Absent Router, you have Dragon Ravine, lots of ways to just get access. And this deck just has the ability to really play the best extenders in Dragon Link. Like, Dragon Link has fantastic supportive cards. Things like World Legacy Guard Dragon and Chaos Space. Still very, very much powerhouse cards. And you'll notice that there's things missing from this deck that might have been in the previous format. Stuff like maxing out on Noctivision or playing like Black Metal Dragon. It's completely absent in this list, as well as Red MD, in fact. But really, this list is trying to go for low resource plays. It's not trying to blow your opponent out with like an absolutely unbreakable board. But the follow-ups this deck produces are insane because they have, of course, Brotar, you have Tiding to bring stuff back, you have Boot Sector Launch. All these cards are really, really good in the grind. So that is one element of that. Another card that's really good in the grind is the Chaos Ruler Synchro, which is pretty standard in this list now as well, because you can make it very easily with your Tracer setups, or if you have to normal summon Rocket Synchron and bring back your Router or your Knock Division, you can go into this too. And this digs for, all your extenders pretty much, and also hand traps, because you can play things like Meister. Psycho Reader happens to be dark, which is cool. You can go for Lancia or Nibiru post side. Lots of options for this card. It also is recurable, of course, and that helps you flow into things like the Red Dragon Archery and Abyss. And you can see Rocket Synchron being a 2-of makes it kind of a bigger focus in this deck, and it plays a bigger role than it might have previously. But other than that, this deck now has a lot of space with the absence of Link Cross and Martial Metal Marcher into Herald. So you can play things like 2 Spheres to help in the grind game, or if your first one gets Nibiru, you can trigger its Grave Effect and then go into a second one. And then there's Sanaphon, which is cool as like an answer to Drytron. So you can break the board against Drytron, you can make this card, and then all their follow-up is in Graveyard to summon from Grave. So if you resolve this card's effect, then you basically just win from there. But other than that, you can see, again, we don't have that many cards to deal with back row matchups. It really is just these 3, which points to the notion that this is lots and lots of combo stuff. 8 hand traps in the main deck and 12 in the side, 20 hand traps. Next, we're going to move on into the second place list. So this is going to be Dogmatika Zoodiac Eldlich. So this is pretty similar to the first place list, except of course with the inclusion of Dogmatika cards, which gives you a bit more starters. But this payoff here is, as we mentioned before, Aerial. Aerial is super, super good. Great to be able to pick up off of your app clone when you go Maximus. Just grab it, pitch it immediately. It hits all the top 3 decks. Super, super solid stuff. And one thing to note here is the Eldritch engine is very, very trimmed down. You notice 2 Conquistador and 1 Walkero. And even the pure Eldritch list for this team in particular, they opted to only play 1 Walkero as well. And I looked at the deck profile. I watched it on Bordo's channel, and they went over the Dragoon Eldritch build, which I'll put on screen for you guys momentarily. But they didn't explain 1 Walkero, so I really do want to know why this is the case. I really do think this card is strong. Especially if you're playing Aerial, right? Clearly, Graveyard Banishing is really good to justify playing it. But yeah, just cutting down the Eldritch cards. I mean, an argument could just be that, these cards are not great to draw in like mass, so just playing less of them might be the way to go. And this kind of points towards a more aggressive approach where they're just trying to end the game a lot faster. And that's definitely fair as well. We see here as well, making room for hand traps. Definitely need to do that. And then Torrential Strike. Torrential is an interesting one because I think people are playing this card a lot less since, players have adapted to play around it better. And again, it can still like miss time against like Lulu and Lily and stuff, because the last thing to happen wasn't their summon, it was to either search or to send another card. But regardless, this card is still high impact and you need strong equalizers, so this is a very, very good card, of course. And then the side deck is not too spicy apart from 4 cards. So we got Ram, which I would assume is there to kind of negate punishment, like in terms of its impact later into the game, because normal summoning it with a zoo in Graveyard basically makes all of your zoos impervious to punishment. And then I guess it can also play around like other traps, like maybe Torrential. And then Golden Lord, a second copy there, probably for like mirror matches where this gets banished via Walkero and stuff. Also helps play around Cycle Reader, because Cycle Reader technically could be brought in against this deck, although you probably wouldn't. And then there's also Red Reboot, which is really, really interesting, I think. Because, again, I mentioned earlier, this probably is a very aggressive approach to the deck in some ways. So I'm curious as to how often they were able to capitalize on Reboot, like, say, activate Reboot and actually just OTK outright. Or if it was really just there to buy them a turn, which could definitely work. And then the side deck here, or sorry, extra deck here, not anything too crazy. Union Carrier is an interesting one. I would assume this is there maybe to do stuff like, equip Golden Lord in case you don't have access to it. That could be something of note. But this is Dogmatika Zoodiac Eldlich. Next up, we got Adamancipator. This is very different from most Adamancipator lists that are being played right now. Not only because of the absence of the Prank-Kids engine, but also because the engine cards are very interesting. We see the triple Hat Tricker, we see Revival Golem with Miracle Rupture, and we also see like triple Dragite, but then we see the TG Tank Rub, and this card allows you to combo with Fiber. You summon it off of the Fiber, use it with one of your level 4s, where you can see there's a ton of level 4s in this deck. You go into Librarian, trigger the effect in graveyard to summon a token because it was used for material for a TG synchro. Then you go into Marshmallow Marcher with like a level 2 tuner, and then you combo off from there. And that allows you to actually set up for Shen Shen and Trishula, and you guys know what that means. Very fun dragon. So very different from what most people are playing. It's focused a lot on like very different combo lines, and also has stuff like Light Dragon at Guister into Zeus to kind of like try and help out there going second. And the thing in the side deck to note the most is going to be Dimension Shifter. This card, I think, I'm surprised it hasn't caught on more to like decks that really can afford to play it. This deck surprisingly can play under it pretty well, because I think they mentioned that you just side out your Reborn cards, put this in, and it's just an auto win against like VW and Drytron all the time. So this card is super high impact. I think it definitely is worth considering if you're playing like a very, very heavy control deck as well. Definitely look at your options. This card is extremely high impact. It is a turn skip similar to these other cards here, like Droll and Lancia, and like Psycho Reader being a high impact card as well. But next, let's move on into Trey Massingale's Dragoon Eldlich. And you can see again the one copy of Walkero. And I wish they explained this. They didn't explain it. But this is, pretty much what Dragoon Eldlich would look like in most cases, right? You have hand traps. And again, it's interesting to see Droll in control decks. But really, in this deck, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially because you have stuff like Summon Limit to kind of just help set up, and Dragoon, both of which are tougher to break through when, even if you have resources, like when you're trying to break the board subsequently after getting drolled. So that makes sense in that context. And there's not a whole ton else to say here. This is just Dragoon Eldlich. The extra deck, I think there's not much to talk about either here. Pretty self-explanatory. But then we got the side deck. We see D-Shifter again. Obviously, they're on the same team. And then we see Talents, which is pretty interesting as well. I think Trey said in the deck profile that this was boarded in against control matchups, which I find to be pretty interesting, since normally the application is when you get hand trapped, and that works well when you're on a combo deck yourself. But there are definitely cases where you can use this like later on into the game when your opponent is interacting with you, because even the control decks obviously use monster effects to try and interact with you in a lot of cases, whether it be their own hand traps or otherwise. And then there's Light Imprisoning Mirror, which is super cool to see. Not really sure how effective this is against, like the overarching metagame, but definitely it does work against Drytron for sure. And the cool thing with this too as well is that you can use Eldlich in graveyard to send this for cost. And so by the time your Eldlich tries to resolve, this won't be on field anymore, so you can actually summon the Golden Lord. So that's like a cool interaction. And then Judgment, pretty standard. So now we're going to move into the top 4 lists. How are we doing on time? We are 17 minutes in. That's a lot better than I expected, but we still have a lot to go. All right, so let's go into top 4. This is Drytron here. There's not really anything to explain with Drytron at this point. I think all of these cards up until the orange light, everybody's playing in like some capacity. Maybe you change around the Drytron ratios a little bit, but this is all pretty standard up to here. And then we see Droll, because I think you have a couple options to deal with hand traps if you're playing Drytron. If you're playing Drytron, you are being targeted. You are everyone's #1 enemy. You have to find ways to counterbalance that. So either you hand trap them back using a strong hand trap like Droll, or you play cards like Call By or Instant Fusion, or both. So these cards are ways to mitigate hand traps, of course. So you definitely need ways to just stop the Drolls, stop the Cycle Readers, just be able to play the game. And then you can see this kind of carries over into the side deck as well, where it's either you're playing cards like Ghost Bell, which negates Cycle Readers, so you can play, or if you get hand trapped, you can just hand trap them back with stuff like Gamma or Lancia or Cycle Reader. It's easier to follow that mentality if you get Droll than if you get Cycle Reader, because if you get Cycle Reader and you don't have an answer like Bell or a Call By or Instant Fusion, then you definitely are on the back foot, because even if you hand trap them back, you still have to play with fewer resources. Unless if you're like Cycle Reading them, like in the mirror or something. But yeah, in general, you can see there's a lot of hand traps, even in the main deck, for Drytron, considering how many spots have to be devoted to engine cards. This is still quite a fair amount of hand traps. And then 12 more on the side, with just 1 twin, 1 red reboot for backward decks. And the extra deck, I think, is very self-explanatory. Nothing at all really spicy here. And then I think Charlie here played the exact same list, so we can move on into the next one. This is going to be, I think this is also the same list. I think they all play the same list. No, just kidding. There's one change in this list, which is Generic Transverser for Herald of the Mirage Lights. But other than that, it's the same list. All right, so the other top 4 lists. we got Virtual World here. The first time seeing Virtual World here actually in this video. But Virtual World did do well in Top Cut, just didn't make the finals. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the more unorthodox lists. And the next one's even more interesting. But you can see playing Extravagance, which is something people were testing around with in this deck for sure. Which lets you cut down on things like Qinglong and Chuche. I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but it's definitely interesting since, these are very easily toolbox and sent to the graveyard or search for like Lulu. So you can like cut back on like even Yan Yan, for example, like play less of these and instead just play more hand traps. So I do like the exchange here, playing 12 hand traps and just allowing you to play this instead of Desires. Of course, the extra deck definitely is very important, and it kind of surprises me that they weren't on 3 copies of Calamities. But overall, I really do like this as an adaptation. Is it superior to like the traditional like Desires and just go all the way? Maybe. I don't think it's definitively better or worse necessarily without a lot of data. And I haven't tested it necessarily myself, but it's definitely cool to see there's adaptations here. And then everything else is pretty straightforward here. Next is going to be, we can actually look at, this Virtual World from the same team, of course. But you can see the difference is there's actually Desires in addition to the Extravagance, which is very, very fascinating because, of course, drawing them together is a conflict. But that being said, the biggest problem with VW is that sometimes you just can't play because you brick. So just trying to find as many ways to unbrick. I salute you for your bravery there. Side deck a little bit different as well. You can see a lot of one-ups here, like one drop, one lightning storm. Without knowing the sighting patterns, it's kind of hard to talk about this, so I can't comment too much on it. But I mean, the choices themselves are like fine enough. So let's go ahead and look at the next Dragon Link list, which is from the same team. So this is going to be top 4, just as a reminder. But this list did play 1 Black Metal and 1 Red MD, which is nice to see. Like this is tutorable off of LP, Brotar, things like that. And then you like that it's not like a starter by itself anymore because overall, again, you just want to be opening like Chamber much more and like ways in the Tracer. But this looks pretty similar to Nets' list. Hand trap lineup a little bit different. But overall, I think the general concept remains largely the same. You can see that instead of the Sanafond, we have Sir Yuja, and we also have Quad Boral in here as well. Excuse me. But yeah, this is pretty good. I think the other card was Appaloosa that was cut. So yeah, Quad Boral is nice. This is a way to just allow you to get rockets back on board. And that's really good because it allows you to help bring back whatever Tracer brought off, as well as the Tracer itself, to go into like Savage or Chaos Warrior later on. So that's really, really nice. You like pair it with Red Dragon Archer and Abyss later too. So that is pretty neat. And then the side deck I think is pretty self-explanatory. The one thing to note here is the Quacky Mirror Drago. I like this card a lot. This is definitely good against Drytron. You summon it off your seal, and they have a hard time winning. They really do. It's very tough. They don't have that many normal summons, and so if you just keep them off of the ability for them to put up anything, then you can just outright win from there. So next, we're going to move into some top 8 lists. So this is going to be a Virtual World list. This is what I would consider very, very stock standard. Not a whole lot to talk about here. Like you can nitpick over individual cards, but overall, this is like, if you think Virtual World, something like this comes to mind, and I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. One thing to note is the side and the extra decks. So I think these cards are all pretty self-explanatory here, but something to note is Cycle Reader in tandem with Orcus Crescendo and Mischief of the Gnomes. Mischief of the Gnomes has come up quite a bit in these side decks, and you'll see that later on. But this allows you to handle the mirror match quite well, since it really, really ruins VW's ability to go into anything relevant if you're reducing everything that they have in their hand. So, and it persists, of course, after they're summoned. So it's very good in the mirror match, and you can send it off of things like Beatrice, which they're playing, and that's cool. Or you can send it off Foolish Goods, which offers more utility, because one of the problems is that if you can already play the game, Foolish Goods can just be dead. But this card can send either your Mischief or your Orcus Crescendo, and then on your opponent's draw phase, you banish the Orcus Crescendo, and then you search Cycle Reader, and that just cripples Drytron. So the fact that there's like a toolbox of spells or trap cards you can send via Beatrice in the middle of your combo, or you can send them off of Foolish Goods, makes this really, really cool to see. And M7, again, very prevalent. I think M7 is like in everybody's VW list right now. Just the ability to add back combo pieces that you send yourself, or you can add back those hand traps as well. It's like really, really good. Next is going to be another Virtual World list. I think it's the same list actually from Hashim here. So let's go ahead and move on. Oh, this is going to be Tristan Pugh's Bird Up list. So here we go. This is going to be an adaptation of the Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc deck that we've seen quite a lot. Playing Jack in the hand is pretty cool. It makes it you can cut down a bit on the Lyriluscs themselves that are not the greatest to draw. This one you often want to like send maybe off a Fractal, or like you can grab these off of your Recital Starling as well. So yeah, the focus here is more so on the Tri-Brigades, it seems. And then there's a lot of space for hand traps. You can see there's 13 hand traps in the main deck. And this deck really just does what it does best. Puts up Barrier Statue, plus Link Creepo against everything not named Virtual World. And against Virtual World, you just put up like Appaloosa and like Apex Avion. And like you are able to back it up with hand traps, and it's pretty good. So this deck is very fascinating. I'm curious to see how it's going to evolve over time. We've seen already, like this is a bit of an adaptation already. But overall, super, super cool stuff to see. Side deck, I think, is pretty self-explanatory as well. Next is going to be another Virtual World list, I think. Yes, this is going to be Nesh's list. Yeah, this is, I think, the same as the other list, except just adding the third copy of Ash, and I think swapping out Droll for Nib. Again, these are very minor differences at this point. We see Fortune Tune. I think we saw this in the earlier list, but yeah, Fortune Tune just like very, very strong as a way to get into Zeus very easily, because it's hard to interact with this card. Like it can't be targeted, and then if it would be destroyed, you just attach one. So it's easy to just make sure it sticks through a battle phase, and then you just go into Zeus. Other than that, we still see Xiaofeng. I think it's like really, really important to play ways to just combo with various hands. So this is one of the options to go for. Not too much to say here, though. It is Virtual World. I think Ryan Yu also played the same list. Yeah, this is Ryan Yu's list from the same team. Same list. And then we got Arjun on Dinosaurs. This is the one Dinosaur list in the top cut. This, I think, is also like pretty self-explanatory, but we see, again, the Dimension Shifter. This card, very, very cool. I like that it actually interacts with Giant Rex in this deck. That's kind of funny. But yeah, like just need a lot of power cards to be able to combat the metagame at the moment. And I think this definitely fits the bill. So yeah, just playing like the 12 power hand traps here, like these are all really, really strong. And it's just Dinosaur. I don't think there's a whole lot to explain here. Everyone knows what Dino does by now. One thing I guess is like maybe Strike being cited in for going first, but there's nothing super innovative about this Dino list, if I'm being honest here. It's a very good list for sure. It's clean cut, it's 40, it's a very good list. Absolutely what you would want to see in Dino. I don't know if I would make any personal changes myself to this list, honestly. Like, this is very, very good. Like, just well built. And then we're going to go into another top 8 list. This is going to be Etienne Ita's Drytron. So again, I think up until like here, it's very standard. Definitely you can see the cutback on Drytron, so only 8 names is like something to take into account. You know, really trying to find space for not only Droll, but also Ash, and then playing the Instant Fusion as well. But yeah, this is Drytron. We see the Vanity's Ruler side decked here. I guess this is like for certain matchups, which is fine. I think it's okay, but I personally just think that Ultimate List is gonna be the same, if not better, most of the time. That being said, though, it is not a bad choice for sure. Next is going to be another Drytron list from the same team with like 1 card difference. It main decked the Vanity's Ruler and then sided a couple cards different. But this is another Drytron list. And then I think the third player also played Drytron. Yep. And I think this is also a couple cards different in the side deck. Yeah, like a couple cards different in the side deck. You see like the Droplet versus like the third Twister and like the Vanity's Ruler. But like in actuality, these cards are like all 90% the same. So there's not a whole lot to talk about here. This is the all Drytron team right there. Then we got our last team in top 8, which is going to be starting off with Burning Abyss. This is really cool. I really like this a lot. I think this is how BA ought to be played at the moment. A lot of people are opting for like trap heavy BA. I don't really like that much because like again, you're putting yourself in a poor position against combo decks because you're not ever guaranteed to break the board. Even if you draw the right combination of traps, because like you've given them the chance to have their follow-up plays as well. Like, because combo decks, you have to keep in mind, they not only set up a board, but they set up ways to play if their board gets broken. So like that's why I think that hand traps are really, really strong in comparison to stuff like hand traps. This is there to like stop ultimateness, so that's definitely good. We see like 20 engine cards and 3 desires, and then 17 non-engine cards. It's very, very clear cut. I like this a lot. And then you can see here the side deck trend continues, but this deck also like natively plays Beatrice, so you can do stuff like sending a Mischief with the Gnomes. We see Mind Drain here, which is pretty interesting, and then the Orcus Crescendo, which you can also mill, just like off Dante, for example. But the fact that you can send these off Beatrice is great. I would actually have been curious to see if there was any consideration for Nailshot Ariel in his list, because Ariel is like a great thing to send out Beatrice for sure. And because these are like sided in, I definitely don't think that the reason for not playing it was just Desires can banish it, because like if you banish Ariel, then you just send something else. But overall, I think that Ariel would have been a pretty nice choice to consider. I do wonder if that was ever on the table. But yeah, Fortune Tune here in BA as well. Like just ways to guarantee Zeus. Like you can never say no to that. But I think that this is overall pretty cut and dry as far as what BA is going to look like. But this is cool to see. I love BA. So I really, really am partial to this list. No Barbar, by the way. So rep Barbar in time. Next, we got Justin Singh's Drytron. So again, this is quite similar. We see the reduction of Drytron names again. Also, we see 2 Petite Angel, which is cool to see that Ava has more targets. Have we gotten to the list yet that actually cut down on Orangeoid? There is a list there, but I don't remember if we got to that yet. Actually, let's just check real fast. I didn't mention, but yeah, this list cut Orangeoid down to 2. I should mention that. But where were we? Yeah, so here we are. Yeah, this is, I think, pretty standard, like apart from maybe just the minor changes, being like the addition of 1 extra angel and then less Drytron names. But it's Drytron. 2 Union Carrier, by the way, in here is pretty cool. Can come up sometimes. I think the cut was Cerberus for it, or Geonator Transverser. Also playing the Frucho, even though like some people have opted to drop it because people can play around it by just putting stuff in attack position and then like wiping the downerd. But still, it's decent. And then we got Marcus Hayden as well, who I believe just played the exact same list. Yeah. All right, so these are all the top 8 lists. Let's now go into the top 16, and we have 24 more lists to get through. All right, 31 minutes in. Let's go and just speed this up. So we got top 16, Daniel Heffernan. This is Virtual World. Talent in the main is something kind of noteworthy because a lot of people are dropping this card. You saw that like, earlier, nobody was playing it. But still here, which I think does make sense to a degree because hand traps are still prominent. That being said, it's not amazing going second at the moment, so it is a consideration to cut, and it's great for budget players who don't want to buy this card in real life. But yeah, you can see again the Mischief of the Gnomes with Beatrice. Surprised no Orcus Crescendo in here to pair with it, but yeah, this is like becoming the new kind of hot trend. Next, we got Luke Coogan, same list, exactly the same list. Then we have Pierluigi Sorrentino, same list. And so we're going to move on. That's the very first team. They made it very easy for me, by the way, to not only talk about this, but to build it. All right, so here's another cool deck list. This is going to be Fam Knights. So this one is taking advantage of not only Connector and Dolphin, but also some of the Isolde stuff. So you're playing some equip spells. I'm kind of surprised there's no Renon to like just add them back for free. But this is cool to see that like these can help access more Fam Knights if needed, because they're playing a fair amount of them. They're playing 4 equips, as well as the Ranka Magic Force. So this helps go into the Arc Rebellion, as well as Dark Requiem. So this just helps you negate literally everything on your opponent's board, or not on your opponent's board, but just like negate all their plays essentially, right? And then this just helps push for game. You just smack for big numbers. But you can see, other non-engine cards, Ash, Droplet. Droplet is fine in this deck for sure, because even though it's not great against VW, there's a chance where you just draw Trap and can help negate Chuche as well. And then the Dragoon package. I love the fact that Saber's in here. I played Sabers in my own list. I really, really do like Sabers quite a lot. It helps make your like BA stuff not nearly as bad to draw. Like it makes them fine. Same with Red Ice Fusion. Deck Lockdown is really interesting to decide. I'm curious as to what this is for. I would presume Drytron. And if so, then that's a pretty cool answer to it. But yeah, the rest of this is, I think, not anything too surprising. I would like to see some of the combos with this build in particular, by the way, because the Isolde stuff definitely changes the lines. So that is something that is new, and if the pilot is ever interested in sharing them, that would be great. But we're going to now move on into another top 16 list. This is going to be Trap Shaddoll. So this is going to be pretty good as far as like an approach to what Trap Shaddoll is looking like, because we have the heavy Dogmatika package. I don't know what my thought was there. That's why I don't know what my thought was. I just had to restart my sentence. But yeah, this is not too bad for sure. We see no hand traps, just going all in on the traps. So what I said earlier with like BA is that sometimes it's hard to like break boards, but I think this deck does a better job at like I would say floating than BA, because like what BA does in terms of its recursion is just it loops the resources. But this deck not only loops resources, but also like loops ways to interact with your opponent. So it does it differently from BA. So I think in this kind of list, like having all traps and just using them to break boards, going second, works out a lot better, especially because like, you're already playing stuff like Shadow Games and Punishment, which are natively slower. But yeah, this list definitely has more of an emphasis on the fusions because there's a higher Shaddoll count, and we see like the fusions here, whereas the other Shaddoll list is not going to be playing those cards. And then the rest of this is pretty standard, I think. Super Poly on the side here, probably for going second against like Drytron, can really just clean up the ultimateness boards. And then we have another top 16 list here. This is going to be Zoodiac, or sorry, not Zoodiac, Dogmatika Eldlich. So this list is interesting because of the fact that it's playing Ghost Soaker. I really am curious as to what the applications for this are. There's like Union Carrier that I can think of. Maybe you hit Chuche, maybe you hit like Cloud Castle if they're relying on that to combo. But yeah, we have not seen Ghost Soaker pretty much at all. So it's cool to see this card come back a little bit at least. But yeah, Aerial again being the payoff with the Dogmatika package. And I think this is like something that's going to be a continual trend. Like, you know, if you're able to just send app clone, search, and then dump Aerial, like that is a devastating way to just triple your opponent's resources and they just go in with your Eldritch stuff. And then again, you see triple copies of Mischief of the Gnome sided. This is like really, really, for sure, definitely one of the cards that has been a standout card. We see Hypation again in the side as well. But yeah, this list I think is, apart from those minor things, not really anything too shocking. All right, next we got Blade Yu-Gi-Oh! This is Blade Yu-Gi-Oh's top 16 Trap Shaddoll list. I'm not going to go into detail with this one because I will be recording a deck profile with him later. But note that this is very different from the other Trap Shaddoll list. You see no copies of Shaddoll Fusion anywhere. You see Pot of Duality, crazy stuff. I love it though. I really do like this list a lot. I would probably trend more towards this type of list if I was playing Trap Shaddolls right now. But obviously you can see both options definitely work. But definitely be on the lookout for that video because I will definitely be asking a lot of questions. If you guys want to leave questions for him, I'll be reading over those as well. But here we got another top 16 list. This is going to be Virtual World. Again, nothing too surprising. Joel in the main deck, Gamma, Ash, and then the Mischief as well being teched in. No Beatrice here, so just sending it off of the Foolish Goods, just as something to note there. But this is nice because if you hard draw it, it's better than like hard drawing, say, Orcus Crescendo. Because that card, the only utility you have is like if you pitch it off your Chainlong, which is still good. But like this card can be used like twice against the mirror match, which is like super, super good. Next up, we got Ryan Ortiz's Dragon Link list. Shouts to Ryan if you're watching this. But yeah, this list also is really, really cool. I like the hospitality inclusion. It just allows you to make seal easier or like facilitate plays if you don't open like an insane amount of extenders. So this is nice. Obviously, the Drag Me traps can be bricky by themselves. Tidying less so, but I mean, still, this is a pretty cool engine. Again, chamber easily tutorable via LP or seal. But the rest of this we've seen in Nets' list already, or the other list from Roberto. And we see the Drago again pop up here. Like this card, definitely cool. And we also see space for Phoenix, but also the Delindrous. And Delindrous, again, in a very heavy focus rocket package, definitely comes up quite a lot. I would have liked to see a list that played both Delindrous and the Quad Boral. I think there is one. I might have spoken too soon. There actually is one for sure that I'm forgetting about right now. That'll be coming up later. But yeah, this list is very, very good for sure. Definitely a solid Dragon Link list. So next we have Pure Eldlich from both Bowden Temnick and Jesse Cotton. This is a doozy to look at. So we got Border main decked. We got all the Eldlich stuff, and we got 29 trap cards in here. So yeah, this is saying, no hand traps. We're just going to try and break the board. Divine Wrath in here to negate stuff like Ultimateness in tandem with everything else. So it's like more copies of Strike. And like if you're sick of Rivalry, like it's basically like more ways to go Rivalry plus Strike, right? So that is like super, super cool. It's literally just stun. Like this is honestly the closest to stun in the format that you can get. Because I think like pure stun has a problem of like just, aggression, longevity. Eldritch can fix that for sure. So this I would honestly almost classify as a stun straight up. But no, this is definitely a good like anti-meta sort of list. Side deck is interesting. I think Jesse's list is different, so we'll cover that a little bit for the side at least, and the extra. But yeah, these are probably like more for maybe the mirror match. This may be going for going first. This could be like to make sure you don't run out of lords if they get banished in like certain instances. We have Thunder King, which is like a cool go first floodgate as an alternative to border. We have Godarla, which is a wind kaiju, so it helps play around the bird up deck. You can kaiju them, and you can also kaiju the ultimate nest, of course. And then you have like some more traps for going first. So this is like a lot of stun cards. Another thing to note here is this, the Crimson Shadow Armor Ninja. This makes Zeus. And that's the effect it reads. It makes Zeus. It's a quick effect that just protects itself, similar to Fortune Tune. It doesn't have the targeting protection, but like it's almost the same. And then we have also the Wind Charmer with Imduck. I'm not really sure what you're summoning from your opponent's grave off of this, but I'd be curious to know. Like, obviously, you can summon like your virtual world, like Lulu or Lalo or stuff, and you can also, I guess hit things in the bird up matchup. But I'm not really sure what you're climbing into besides like the unicorn. And there's also Avenged Savior, by the way. This card can send a lord in the damage step to help out Dragoon, which is cool. So that's nice. But yeah, we can move on to Jesse's list just as an alternative. See the side deck's a bit different. We see Storm Duster, but we also see Witch's Strike, which is like a cool tech. It's just a way to like have a more protective card for just making sure your back row doesn't get blown out. Because again, if you're playing 29 traps, you better have a way to protect them. So playing these cards is definitely good. And then playing more trains instead of the level 5s, or rank 5s rather, to help with like extravagance and stuff. Just more options. And then we have Asala's Drytron list. So this is probably the most different list because they're still on the Vanity's Ruler build with the Draconids to help like facilitate that, to have like machine attribute. And still like on the purple light even, no Petite Angel, and like playing Ash as like the 42nd or 41st to 43rd card. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Duelist Academy they had a stream where they talked about this deck in particular, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But overall, not anything too shocking. Denko is nice. We saw this in the feature match with Asala in it. And also Ningirsu is cool to like out Dragoon and stuff. Next, we got Cam Neal. So this is going to be another Drytron list. This is going to be Megalith Drytron, though. And it's cool to see stuff like the Megalith still make an appearance. I like that this is an adaptation to help like make different boards. And also just like have alternatives to be able to like work with your Drytron names and stuff if like you get hand trapped, because like these can still get you out of like spots where you get hand trapped, which is nice. Main deck Lancia as well as maybe a hedge towards like Virtual World, because again that deck was a super rising in popularity. And then we see Extra Foolish Burial, which is kind of a cool alternative to Preparation of Rites. Obviously it's not good in time, but this card allows you to go second and break boards with like part of your engine, so that's cool. And I do think that this is pretty standard. Again, we see Bell. I think Bell and like Drytron is like not mandatory by any means, but like it's really, really good to have because again, you just really need to beat Cycle Reader. It's so hard to play against Cycle Reader with this deck if you're not prepared. Next, we have Ramiro Garcia, who is another YCS champion. So many YCS champions in this top cut. But yeah, this is another Virtual World list. Pretty standard apart from the 2 copies of Solemn Strike, which is kind of nice just as a way to have a flexible go first or go second card. This card is pretty high impact, so I do quite like this. I also like the Dino Wrestler package in the side deck where you can Foolish Good send this. I would like to see a side deck where it's like this plus Pankratops plus like Orcus Crescendo and Mischief of the Gnomes. It's like have an entire toolbox for Foolish Goods and then like play Beatrice too. Like that would be a really like sick list to see. But yeah, apart from that, not anything too surprising. It's VW. And then the last teammate here is Colin Bradshaw. This is another VW list. Same side deck, almost the same main deck, just swapping out 2 strike for 3 nib. And then same extra deck as well. Then we have the next team. Oops, I skipped a player. That's fine, actually. That works out because I think this is a different list from the other 2 players. So we got another Dragon Link list here. And this one is a lot different, actually. No Dragon Maid list, or no Dragon Maid engine, rather. But a lot of rockets, lots of rockets here. And you see again the quad boral Delindris that I thought, I mentioned, I was like, wait, no, somebody is playing this together, and here it is. This is very reminiscent of Xumping's UDS winning build back in February 2020, where basically the board would be something like Seal, Abomination, Savage, backed up by hand traps. Like this seems to be a riff on that, with some more different takes. You even see like 2 boots at your launch as a nod to like, okay, we want to play a lot of rockets here. And that is kind of the general gist of it. Side deck, I don't think it needs much explanation. IP is a cool inclusion too. IP with Abomination seems nice. Then we're going to go into the Drytron list. So this, no, not Drytron, sorry, Virtual World. Whoa, getting my decks confused, I guess. This is, again, not anything too shocking. Cutting a Foolish Goods. Daring today, are we? No, but now this is pretty self-explanatory. This list is also very strong. Main decking Bell, and then side decking more hand traps. Playing things like Fan and Gaia Dragon, as well as Coral Dragon. You might have noticed that a lot of people actually cut Coral Dragon. So it's cool to see that this is like still in some people's lists. But yeah, just like more ways to help like break boards, go into Zeus, things like that. And then we also have the third player who is on Drytron. There we go. So yeah, this is going. I think I just got my preview confused in my mind, but yeah, this is, again, cutting down a little bit on Drytrons here, and then kind of reverting back to the whole ultimateness thing with no Megaliths. Like, this is like the stock standard kind of variation. Playing both Call by and Instant Fusion, trying to keep it to 40. But then we see the side deck be Denko with the Aqua Dolphin. This is a card that people were playing quite a lot before everyone was playing Cycle Reader. And funnily enough, this player didn't opt to play Cycle Reader themselves. But this card does help to beat Droll. The thing is that sometimes in this deck you need your normal summon to be Manju if you just don't open enough Drytrons, especially access to Meteonis in particular. So this kind of does get in the way of that, but this also can help you in cases where like you need to go into Almirage, and then like Link Rebo helps you make carrier because of both Cyberses. That's cool. Denko also just like a way to shut down backward decks. So this player definitely valuing the normal summon in the side deck utility department, which is interesting to see. All right, and we got 2 more teams to go. All right, we're 46 minutes in, not too bad. This is the VW Hand Loop deck. This deck is wild. Beast the Pharaoh lets you go into things like Trish, and goes into things like Xavier Gothams, and go into Enter Blathnir, and Cloudcastle to bring back the Xavier Gothams multiple times. So pretty interesting. I didn't really think this deck would really, find success, but here we are, right? So this player piloting it, and worst case scenario, you just end on VFD. I feel like VFD accomplishes like the same thing anyway, but I guess this has maybe coverage against like back row matchups maybe. But I do think VW also is pretty good into back row anyway. But yeah, this is pretty cool. You see the side deck though is like a lot of 2-ofs, which I know some people might be upset at that, but hey, this is Virtual World, right? So good stuff there. We got a Dogmatika Invoked list. Cool to see. This has the Red Ice package in it, and is playing a fair amount of hand traps. We have 3, 6, 8, 10 hand traps. We have like triple tactics. We have the obviously Dogmatika stuff, and decided Aerial too. So again, Aerial, coming up here, very very important. And I think there's not anything else too surprising. This is what some people would consider a very boring deck, but it's Dogmatika Invoked. It's still lurking around. So this is what the lists are looking like. I think this is also another Dogmatika Invoked list, but this is a bit different, cutting down on Ecclesia, but playing Desires and no Red Ice package, playing the Dragon Master Knight instead for the punishment. But yeah, this is just a different kind of way to approach the deck. And then the side deck also containing a lot of 2-ofs here, but the Artifact package is pretty interesting. We haven't really seen the Scythe in quite a while, but definitely can still be super high impact if your opponent just has no response to it. Against like Virtual World specifically. And then we got the final team here. So this is going to be another Virtual World list. This one I think is about as standard as it gets. Like there is nothing super crazy about this one. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, quite honestly. This is very, very solid. Then we have Nick Petzold, also on Virtual World, adding I think the third Nibiru, and I believe that was the only change between these 2 lists. No, I'm just kidding. The side deck is also a bit different. So we see Ghost Spell in the side deck for Nick. And we see, I think there's no more Lancia in here, but also like Lightning Storm. So like some small deviations, but really this ends up just being what your siding pattern ends up being, as well as the expected metagame. But as far as like the overall game plan of the deck, nothing really changes with this. And then I think the last list is going to be Jibriel's Adamancipator Prank-Kids list, which I really like a lot because this is playing the non-Butler version, which I think is I'm a big advocate of not playing Butler because I think it's just so many bricks to play the Butler stuff. And so like this is nice because it streamlines just whatever extenders you want to play. Do like the inclusion of the Petting Sensor to help get into Granite because Granite's quite important since you need to open a tuner pretty much. So definitely really like that a lot there. Almirage with Parallax Seed is good for like the Doki openers, like hand trap openers, and this is pretty good. We also got a side and the extra. I don't think is really anything to like mention too much. Lambda for Gamma, pretty cool. One thing I've noticed is like people aren't playing the Leonite Synchro, the level 6, which I am a personal big fan of, but maybe that's just me. I like having the ability to summon back like the Guardian on my opponent's turn, and that's why I like play the Lampsies in my build. But I mean, overall, again, this list very, very solid. He's the one who piloted this and brought it to like prominent success, so he's the one who deserves the credit. So it's great to see him top with it. But that is going to be it for all the top cut deck lists in this entire tournament and the entire metagame. So I'm surprised I fit 48 lists into 50 minutes. I don't know how I did that, but we'll take those. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comments. Subscribe for more informative and competitive video content. If you want, you can follow me on all social media platforms or support me via Patreon, TCG Player. All the links in the description as usual. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys. Also, I just realized that my preview thing on the right just doesn't work. Oops. Oh well. I'll leave a pinned comment. See you guys.